Thank you. I apologize a little bit. I have a little cold, and then futilely trying to cheer the Cyclones on to victory over Nemesis this weekend. Did a little number on my voice as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our experience here. Similar to what Jay said, we've seen a similar reduction in new PRRS introductions into our sow farms. So talk a little bit about our system and what we have done and what we've seen. This is a map of our geography, and so as you look at that map, the big sows or the little sows kind of show where our sow farms are primarily located. So in southern Iowa, there's some counties with sow farms. We've got about 65,000 sows down in southern Iowa, and then you can see the bigger sows in some of those counties up through north central Iowa. So a lot of sows located in some pretty hog-dense areas. Hamilton, Franklin, Hardin County, places like that. And then we got some a little bit up in the northwest corner of Iowa, up in northeast Iowa. Up there, we've recently built some new sow farms up there, plus some existing sow farms. And then we have one farm in Nebraska. So if we didn't have that farm in Nebraska, 100% of our production would be within the state of Iowa. We do have, you can see the counties that are highlighted there. Those would all be counties where we have finishing pigs as well. So most of our production lies in the western 2/3 of the state, the northern half of the state, but we do have a fair amount of production down in the southern couple tiers in Iowa. And just to kind of break that out, this is a map from the USDA of swine geography and density. And so you can see, put a little box around the north central Iowa area where we have most of our farms, and then just kind of highlighted, blew that up on a map of our sites. The small sites would be finishing sites, and then the big sites would be sow farms, or the bigger sites that pop up there. So we have a lot of sow farms intermingled with a lot of our finishing, and then also a lot of other people's finishing, several of which I see here in this room. Thank you very much. That's nice. We get to share with each other. But all in all, we have 48 sow farms all located in Iowa, about 240,000 sows total. You can see really our PRRS incidence overall from about 2010 to 2016 was 76% new break incidence. When I break that out in our central Iowa, north central Iowa, some of our, basically take out our southern Iowa farms that are in less hog dense area, it's about 85% break rate. You can see in 2019, almost nothing for new PRRS breaks. 2018 is a little bit misleading. Well, I suppose numbers don't really, are never necessarily misleading, but some of those breaks would be southern Iowa farms where we had not had PRRS breaks in 5 years, and we had some PRRS activity, so kind of a shift in which farms we saw break. Then also there's a few that are classified in there where we thought we had them cleaned up, and we put gilts back in and found the virus, so the status would have changed. We would have changed it to negative and back to positive. I'll talk a little bit about filtration, but if you go back to January of 2018, in our filtered farms, we've only had one sow farm break with PRRS. Shouldn't say that very loud. So some of the things that we've done, the biggest thing and certainly the most critical step is our sow farm remodels and putting positive pressure filtration into the farms. So a lot of investment and buy-in, direction from our leadership, so from our owner, from Jeff Hansen and Noel, really decided that this was the direction we were going to take. And so, making that successful is a priority. So as we remodeled farms to go to pen gestation, we were going to be spending a lot of money and opening farms up to remodel them. So we put in the positive pressure filtration at that time. Along with that, we did a lot of other things in terms of enhancing our biosecurity as well. Most of the things that I've listed here are things that are on-farm type things that were put in. And I'll show a couple examples in the next picture too, but Jay talked a little bit about the transition rooms. All the farms we put in filtration, we have basically a room where we'll load any wean pigs or coal sows into before they go out. That room's pressured, basically a Danish entry, and then that person goes back and changes and showers before they come back to the farm. We put in bench entries into all the farms. We put UV chambers in all these farms, D&D rooms in all the farms, and then put designated tools, a tool set for maintenance and welders. So that's where only maintenance has the key, so all the 9/16" wrenches don't end up missing when the maintenance comes in. So really limited the amount of stuff that has to be brought into the farm. The other thing is a lot of these things, we can't do everything, in a non-filtered farm that we could do in a positive pressure farm. We didn't build new transition rooms onto these farms to load animals into, but a lot of the things like putting in a bench, we had D&D rooms on all those farms. We put in UV chambers into most of those. A lot of the things that we took as things that we could do on those farms, we also put into the non-filtered farms as well. And this just kind of shows some examples, but you can see on the left, there's up in the upper left, that's an example of a breeding or a gestation breeding transition room for coals going out. And then on the lower left is wean pig room where we load wean pigs into, and then that room's gonna be pressurized, and then when the truck shows up, the door opens and somebody's in there. One thing that I mentioned on the last slide, but I didn't talk about yet, is some of the training and retraining. When we made a lot of changes, and it was a great opportunity when the farm staff who dealt with PRRS, 85% break rate year over year, knew that they were getting a farm that was going to be remodeled, it was going to be nice, it was going to be filtered. They bought into the fact that filtration was going to be better, maybe not perfect, but better. And so it was a great opportunity for everything to get better. So everybody understood that, we can't do everything else the same way we did before. When we filter the farms, we've got to make sure everything else is right too. So we revamped all of our biosecurity protocols at that time. And so one thing that I think is important, or two things that I think are important, is number one, we had a lot of, so if we put us all in a room and everybody made their own biosecurity protocols, we probably would have as many different protocol variations as the people in this room. And that's probably not what's important. It's the fact that you come to an agreement and that you're consistent on the execution of those things, and you believe that we've come to an agreement. The agreed upon protocols are what we're going to do and what we're going to train to, and we're not going to have one-offs and, I don't necessarily think that was the right way. And so one thing I think was important is, our sow supervisors were involved with those protocol developments. We had sow farm managers, especially on a couple of the first farms we filtered, that were involved developing those protocols. And they had as many or more good ideas about how we did things, than, the health services group had good ideas, they had good ideas. And I think there's buy-in from everybody in that chain when it's not one person dictating either. Have an opportunity for everybody to be involved in that process. The second thing that's important is the follow-up. We did put video cameras in all the farms, all the filtered farms, and then in certain areas in the non-filtered farms, looking at loadout areas, looking at the bench entry, UV chamber, different areas where there's opportunity for disease risk, the D&D room. And what we found is the first couple times you watch it, there's a lot of opportunity. Some of it is probably just people thinking that, I'll just still do it this way. And most of it is probably, when you go in and try to train on a bunch of new stuff, it's a lot of information for people to take in. But what we found is once they got that feedback, the things we find now are very minor oversight type things, is what I would say. So, really been able to impact that more by being able to do those video reviews than by doing audits. And we'll do a video review. Every farm still gets checked 8 times a year. So a lot of opportunity for new employees or making sure we still do things right. Another thing we did is we invested a lot in our disease surveillance. So our gilt population all grows out in Iowa. We have an internal PCR lab. We want to increase the amount of testing we are doing. We do 4 oral fluids per airspace within 4 days of movements of all animals. We check all of our GDUs, and that would be HNS through bred gilts every week, and irregardless if they're moving or not. And then we check our gilt grow outs at least once a month so that we can kind of keep tabs. We're not finding some high CT thing at the end. Especially we do vaccinate all of our gilts as a young gilt for MLV. So being able to distinguish what we're seeing on test results following those through makes a big difference. And with that increased testing, we put a new extractor in our PCR lab. We run 450 PCRs a week through our lab, and then we do a plate of PED, Delta, TG every week as well. Just kind of to talk a little bit about what we've seen since we started going down the path of filtering farms 3-4 years ago. We've got 40. I mistyped here. It should be 84 years, not 44 years, combined between our sow farms. 59 total years of filtration in our sow farms and 25 years in our GDUs when you figure out the total number of farms and how many years through those. That's 18 remodeled sow farms, 9 new sow farm builds, and then we also have 10 filtered GDUs. So our gilt system is such that we HNS, and then most of our farms would receive a bred gilt, mid to late gestation bred animal. We do have some HNS GDUs as well. We're an HNS gilt lender into our sow farm. What we've seen for reduction since we've done that is, so looking at that north central Iowa sow farms, taking out the filtered farms that are in lower PRRS incidence areas, but that 85% break rate type group, we went down to about a 10% break rate. So depending on how you figure it, we had 5 breaks in about 54 years, so a little under 10%. We also had 2 farms that broke as we did some depop offsite breed project repops, and as we basically populated those farms, we found PRRS back in them. So if you count those in, it's about a 13% break rate on those. So a 6 to 9x reduction in new breaks with the filtration, and that's in all those would be in high swine density areas where we'd have multiple other commercial pigs within 2 miles of those farms. And if you just look at it on a system breakdown, actually, Jay, we're very similar. We're 56% PRRS negative, so 58, 56. That's kind of interesting for 2 totally distinct operations. And then that's our overall system. If you look at the breakdown by filtered and non-filtered, we're still doing some PRRS eliminations on some of our remodels and have some cleanups to go, but we're over 80% negative on those. And then it's vice versa on our non-filtered farms. We're well over 80% still PRRS positive. And part of that goes back to what Jay said in terms of trying to manage certain herds where we have PRRS breaks more frequently. We'd be closing herds, not even getting them opened up before we'd break with PRRS again. The way these closures are taking place and the way we enter gilts into these farms, we'll try to do some things to improve our stability and manage our way through those. And then just to finish up, a few reasons why probably our PRRS incidence is lower. I think really a big thing is investment in the facilities, the filtration, all things biosecurity, the training for staff. Definitely helped with our increased gilt surveillance. We've had less issues where we've accidentally taken positive gilt somewhere. One thing is possible is certainly 174 is the predominant strain we see in our area. For our positive farms, a lot of ours are endemic vaccinated farms. Perhaps there's some cross protection there in terms of why we're not seeing as many lateral PRRS breaks there. And then I know I've heard some people say maybe one thing that's different in the last year, last fall and spring's been very wet and manure has been tough to move. So maybe decreasing some of that has helped a little bit too. Hard to say, but just another potential thought over the last year. That's what I have.
Any questions for Dr. Thomas? Quick question, Dr. Thomas. Whenever you started implementing the filtration, you said that you had to review all the protocols. Did you have to move people around in between farms just because you were afraid of a farm manager not implementing protocols correctly? Like, I'm talking compliance.
Probably not so much that way. I think, but one thing we did do when farms are getting filtered, remodeled, we did make sure, as we went into that process, there's always people turnover and things changing and shifting, and made sure we had people managing those farms that we felt were going to do a good job from the outset. And so I think that certainly helped. And they're, leaders and people that other farm managers looked up to as well. So there's going to be a positive message and reinforcement for the whole system.
Great. Thank you.